course. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Addiction. I am your host, Al Richards, and I am really excited to sit down and have an amazing discussion about trauma to triumph with our two amazing guests. We have Brian and Nicole. Guys, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day, because I know you guys are extremely busy. Brian was just saying before we got on how he was busting butt from Las Vegas to try to get to his brother's house and to get on the show. So guys, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you for having us, Al. We're excited to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, you bet. And thank you, Jeremy. Jeremy, if you happen to watch this, thank you for connecting us. And it is so crazy. There are no coincidences. You know, you guys were out at the Mascot Bowl. I happen to pull up. This beautiful young lady by the name of Nicole comes up and says, "I know you." And I'm like, okay. And she's like, "Are you Al?" And here it is that we have our little thing right next to you guys. We've only spoke over the phone. And I tell you what, it was an absolute pleasure. And I mean that seriously, meeting you guys for the very first time out at the Mascot Bowl. And I could feel your energy and your passion even over the phone when we spoke. But to see you guys in person and see what you guys are going after and what you want to accomplish and what you want to do, I knew right away that I wanted to definitely build a relationship with you guys, because I believe we're all on that same ship. We want to make a difference in this world.
Well, I think the serendipity even goes before that, because when Nicole was trying to help me push the book Cleared Hot, she saw you as somebody that would connect to that, reaches out to you in social media. And then Nicole, you could mention what happened after that.
Well, and then when your name was brought up by Jeremy, I was like, I know that name. And how do I recognize that name, right? And then I was like, oh, I know him from Facebook. And I remembered you because, Al, you took the time to wish me happy birthday in a very special way, right? It wasn't just the generic happy birthday on Facebook. And I looked at that and it really stuck with me. And I thought, if we could all take the time to be that kind, just to do those little things that make a difference, because it really made me remember who you are. And so I was really excited when Jeremy said Al Richards. I was like, I do know who that is. And I felt like I already kind of had this connection with you, and I already knew you. You know, I could already feel that energy and that love from you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
One thing Nicole's really good at is we have a cause, we have the things that we feel passionate about, and she'll go into a group of people and she'll just follow her heart where she needs to connect with. And I think it even goes beyond onto the social media, because I don't know how many times this isn't a unique thing. This has happened with her in a lot of different ways. She'll feel like she needs to reach out to somebody, whether it be on social media or just in person, and we don't even know why, but then the tumblers align and there's synergies and there's alignment in mission and purpose. So more than happy to be here, excited to be here, excited for what you do and what your big event tomorrow, and happy to share what we're doing as well.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, thank you so much. And you guys, it's like I've known you for a long time already. I mean, seriously, and that's what I love about even doing this, right? We get to meet so many incredible individuals that have clawed their way out of some pretty dark places to drop the shovel, per se, and now they're out there making a huge difference. And that's exactly what you two are doing. And man, I'll hang with people like yourselves all flipping day long, because it's very inspirational. I get to learn, I get to grow, and I hope the same, that I'm able to give the same. So, what the heck got you guys to come up with the trauma and triumph?
Brian, you go ahead with this one, because I really feel like it's your book, right?
Yeah. So what happened with my background, I'm 27 years in the military, 12 years Army and 15 years Air Force. Flew Apaches for the Army and flew combat search and rescue for the Air Force, multiple tours to Afghanistan, Iraq, and Africa. And my very first tour with the Apache was very eventful. And when it's eventful in a war, that's not necessarily a good thing, but it was very eventful and experienced a lot of things that people would absolutely say, yes, that's trauma. That's a traumatic experience. And from that, experience after experience after experience, what I found was those experiences, although ugly, became very foundational to who I was, right? And in a good way. While they were ugly experiences, they gave me greater perspective. They gave me greater resilience. They gave me greater patience in a lot of ways. It just was actually became almost a superpower. But I had a lot of peers that were experiencing the very same things that I was experiencing, but it became foundational to who they were too, but not in a good way. If it came, I wouldn't say a foundation, it came a weight that they were carrying on top of them. So, foundation's a solid, heavy thing. You put it underneath you, you're good to go. You put it on top of you, it can crush you. And I saw it starting to crush really strong warriors, like guys that you would just be like, I never would have guessed that from him. And that got my brain thinking. I was like, what's the difference? What's the difference? And really the catalyst was 7 years after that deployment, I was getting a decoration for something that happened on that deployment. And it's at a Utah Jazz game by a senator, was given it at halftime. Right. And not my thing, but because the senator's involved, it had to be this big thing. Right. And so
not just because the senator was involved, but because it's the Distinguished Flying Cross, right? It's a big deal to get that.
Wow.
Yeah, but they don't always give it I mean, because it was the senator was why it was at a Utah Jazz game. But and it went, because it went so long without being, and there's a whole story behind that, and it's a really cool story. But when I walked out to get that award with the senator, maybe to be presented that award, the Utah Jazz had been winning that game, and there'd been a lot of cheering going on up until that point. And when I went out and was walking out there, it was deafening. It was way louder. They were reading the citation, and I couldn't hear them read the citation. I couldn't hear it. And it was just an overwhelming feeling. And these are people that have no idea who I am. They have no idea, they know what they're reading. They're here. Really what they were resonating with was, here is a story that is traumatic and powerful, and a guy that rose his hand and said, I'll go do this and for us, or whatever, however they connected to it. But what that told me is that story and other stories like it have a lot of power to touch and reach people. And I was like, all these experiences that I've had that I feel are foundational to a better version of myself are not wasted on just me, but they're underutilized, right? Those stories absolutely can be used for a greater impact. Yeah. And so at that moment, I was like, I got to do something with this. I didn't know what it was, but it ended up being book that was supposed to be training. The book was supposed to get awareness and have it be entertaining story and all that kind of stuff, but be really sneaky with some lessons. And then later a training developed to transform your trauma into your triumph. And that's where the name came from. Long answer, sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, and the training is a transformational training. It's actually where we met, and the training is, we call it a transformational training. So that's where we really got the piece of trauma to triumph. Like Brian said, you're transforming your trauma into triumph.
And I love that whole explanation, because that just gave me a visual of everything, right? Because I've said a few times in some of my public speaking events that my greatest moments haven't come from my greatest moments. My greatest moments have come from the tragedies and the failures in my life, right? And we all handle things in different ways. Some of us go to drugs and alcohol. Some of us go to gambling, some eating, some we just shut the world off. Some we bury ourselves into our work. And for you to even recognize what you saw and see individuals take things in different ways, right? I mean, to me, that was huge. And then to also start looking deeper into it and wanting to write a book to help other individuals understand, because that's what you guys do now. You help people understand. You help them work through their triumphs, right? Which every single person out there has them. I don't know of one person that I've either interviewed or even talked to when I ask them, what kind of trauma have you got in your life? everyone's gone through it, because that's what life is about. We have to experience this stuff, right? Because if we don't, how can we get better? The sad thing is sometimes it takes us in the wrong direction. And to be able to give someone the tools like what you guys are doing, just, it's like the choices I had to make when I was learning how to control my temper. In my mid-20s, I went to therapy for 6 months because I had a terrible, terrible temper. Very, very bad. I hurt someone I cared about, seeing them laying on the ground, curled up in a ball, because I hurt them. And I'm thinking, I don't want to be this type of person. It took some time in my therapy, just like it does like in recovery and different things, just all kinds of things in life, where you go, oh my gosh, why haven't I seen this? I have the choice to do something different. I don't have to continue to go down this path. And that's what you guys do to help people, correct?
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, what I was just going to add to that, I mean, I love that you shared that, but it's, you know, sometimes from our darkest moments, they can become our greatest strengths. And I think that that's really, you know, that is what we want people to understand, is that they're whole and complete already as they are. We're not broken. And we all have that capacity inside of us, right? And we know the answers. They're inside of us. We don't need to go to these external sources to get them. And so that's really that's the message that we're getting out there, right? That these things can become a strength for you. And like you, I mean, my worst, how did you put it? That your greatest?
My greatest moments didn't come from my greatest moments. They came from my failures and tragedy.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the way that you put that, because I completely resonate with that. And I think all of us can.
So one thing, there's two things that you said, Al, that I really liked in what you said. One of them I think was an accident, but you said we all have our triumphs, right? What I think you wanted to say was we all have our traumas.
Yes.
But I love that you slipped up, because it's all perspective. It's all perspective. And then following that up, you said it's your choice. It's our choice. It's the choices we make, right? Well, it's all those two things go hand in hand. Our traumas are what we choose to make of them, right? Because trauma is power, but it's power unguided. We guide that power. So we decide, we choose where to guide that power. Now, and I'm not blaming anybody who chooses to go down a coping mechanism road that is self-harm. A lot of the time, that is a choice, though. That is absolutely a choice. However, it's often a choice made without really thinking. It's your program to make that choice because of things that have happened in your lives. And that's where that's the path you naturally go to. So what our training does, it says, look, it is all a choice, and you chose this, and let me show you how you chose this, right? And the fact that you chose it isn't to give you the, oh crap, what am I doing? It's not that. It's, you have all the power. You have all the power. You can choose that which you have chosen, or you can choose this. And to do that, to change the trajectory, one of the things we say in the training is the only way out is through. We have to figure out what fear, what trauma, because a fear will create a belief will create a behavior. So we go through the behavior, figure out what the belief is and what the initial fear was, the initial cause. Now let's go through that and let's make a different choice. And we'll use that foundational piece instead of the weight. So I love that you slipped up and said triumph. And I love that you said choice, because those are two of the huge things that we talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you for catching that too, Brian, because some light bulbs were going off when you said that. Because if I can remember, I may even use that in my talk tomorrow at our event, because really we do all have our triumphs, right? I mean, we do. It's just, how do we look at it? And I was talking to a coworker yesterday, and he goes, Al, if you really look at life, it's all about the message in the mirror. And I'm like, the message in the mirror, the M&M. I'm like, my gosh, I like how that sounds, right? Because there is a message behind everything. There is a lesson behind everything. The trauma is a lesson. What do we learn from it if we choose to, right? Do we let it grab a hold of us and go, oh, poor me, this happened to me and my life sucks now because of it? Or do we stop and say, okay, I'm going to feel these emotions. It sucks. I don't like it right now. However, what's behind this? What's the lesson behind this? What can I learn about me during this trauma? Because we can learn so much. And again, if we just look in the mirror, if we just look in the mirror and take this time to go through that experience, I think you will see that there is triumph beyond that.
Absolutely. And I love that you said it's that moment, right? In that moment, because that's all we have. So if that's what we're experiencing it, then let's experience it and get through that moment, and get from it what we can, right? And realize that it is just a short time. And we have this all the time, even, I mean, in our personal lives, and Brian will remind me things, like, sometimes we go through things and sometimes I'm like, man, things feel tough right now. They feel really difficult. But, Brian's always a good reminder of, well, this is what you're feeling right now, but this is just a moment. Let's get a bigger perspective. And that's what Brian talks about, is the gunfight, right? And you can explain that, Brian, because that's more of your analogy. But yeah, are we looking at the gunfight, or are we looking at the bigger picture? Are we so caught up in the gunfight that we're not seeing the big picture?
Yeah, the one story that pops into my head that recently happened. I do use a story with the gunfight we can talk about in a second, but that's a war story. But it's funny, like I do like to share the war stories because people like those and it drives home. But really, these things happen in everyday life. Recently, and my son is 11 years old, and he was 10 actually when I think this happened. But recently, his dog died. Right. And the dog was only 3 years old. The dog was healthy. There was no, we did not know, there was nothing to lead up to, hey, the dog's going to die. And the way that the dog died is we walked out the door and in the morning, and the dog came up and limping and hurting, and we didn't know why. And looking at her, and her name's Paula, and we're like, she's not like this. She's just that something was wrong. And so we decided to take her to the vet, and because it was bad. And I put her in the Jeep. Axel, my son, jumps in the Jeep with me because it's his dog. And I was kind of hesitant to let him come because it was bad. I was like, ugh. And as we're driving, she passed. And she passed in a really ugly way. For those that have grown up on farms or hunted, she did the death quiver, where she's gasping, reaching for that last, sucking in the pain, the anguish. You could see the life leave her eyes, and then the bowels evacuated, and with a yelp and a whine and a whimper, and then the tongue hangs. About as ugly as you can get. And of course, my son starts crying, and it's understandable. And I told him, I said, Axel, of course you're going to cry, and it's okay to cry. This is a sad moment. We've just lost Paula, a good friend, and it's okay to cry. This is sad. Well, I want you to feel that. I want you to realize how that feels. But what I want you to do right now also is think about the fun things that you've done with Paula, the joy that you've had with Paula. When she run up with a ball, she's wagging her tail, she jump in your lap, you pet her, all that, run around doing goofy things, running into a tree, all the funny things and that brought joy to your life because of Paula. And if that's all you ever experienced, it would mean nothing without this. You have to feel this to appreciate the joy. So we have to have these ugly moments in our lives where it's okay to cry, and it's okay to be sad, and it's okay to feel that. We have to have those to understand joy. We have to have the yin to have the yang. And so we can be grateful for the pain and understand that the pain is there so that we can experience joy, right? Because joy would mean nothing without it. And the greater pain we've felt in our life, you know what that means is we've stretched all the way that way, which means we can go all the way to the other side. So the people who have experienced the most pain have actually had one of the most, they've been handed, if you will, a blessing to appreciate joy in a way that others can't, because they've never experienced the pain in that extreme.
Yeah, that is so very well said, Brian. It's why I say I like to hang with people in the recovery community, right? Because these are people who said they hit rock bottom, or at least they thought, and then they hit another rock bottom. So they thought just to hit another rock bottom, right? They understand life. That's just how I see it. This is just how I'm looking at it. It's my belief of it. They've clawed their way out of some pretty bad stuff. They've allowed themselves to go through the emotions. They were at one point in their life, they had no love, just not for individuals, but for themselves, which is the most important, right? They looked at themselves as worthless. They didn't deserve to be here on this planet. And now you see the life that is inside these individuals. My gosh, the love and the energy that they put out. I walk into a recovery center for one of their events and I'm like in heaven, because I can just feel the energy and the love that is just coming from everyone. And I like how you allowed your son to feel his emotions. And I hope this doesn't sound bad, but I think this is how it is. Coming in the military, you guys have to be focused. You have to be strong. You see things that people that you are protecting, like myself and my family, we don't see, right? We may see it on movies and different things like that. Well, that's movies. We're not feeling that experience. We're not there. We're not seeing it. But to tell your son, feel these emotions, it's okay to cry. To me, that's huge that you said that to him. And then also what you followed up with it, right? Because I don't know how many of our guests have heard this saying, if you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about. It's a statement that I never ever understood as a kid. You don't want me to cry, but yet you're threatening to give me something to cry about. I'm not getting this, right? And it's, again, why are we always being told we're not to feel our emotions? Why does society do that? Because so many people hide them. I think that's why suicide rate is going up, because people are afraid to talk about it. They don't want to be looked at as weak, especially someone in the military, right? We're not weak, we're strong, because this is what we do. This is what we put up with. This is what we've seen. And even if you're not in the military, I've had guests on the show that grew up on farms and different things like that, man, and you just tough things out, right? You do not complain. You do not open your mouth. You just keep things to yourself. That was part of my anger issues, is I kept everything bottled up. And then when that little teeny tiny fuse was lit, it was exploding very quickly. And it was because of all the emotions I was holding in, instead of releasing them and allowing myself to feel the emotions that I needed to feel to become a better person. Because you said it just a minute ago, all these things help us become stronger and better as individuals.
Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of keeping that in perspective. And that's what we kind of teach it at our training too, is one, it's your choice, but what we almost say that this everything's make believe because we create it. It's a choice, right? And the story that Nicole was alluding to is that I shared, that the gunfight is all about keeping that in perspective. When I first deployed to Afghanistan, never been to war before, and I was the first one in our company to land. Like, me and two other guys were our advanced party, and they hadn't been deployed to war before either. So we were green guys, like we were green, and we landed in a C-17 early in the morning, and we had our Apaches in the back of our helicopter. The back of the C-17, and then as the back of the door started to open, and the light came through, and our eyes were dark adapted, so it's kind of like out of a movie, wow, like the light. And the first thing that hit me was a smell that I didn't expect, which was clean. Like, we're going to a war-torn country. I guess I just expected it to smell like hot garbage. The joke is, when anybody that's listening to this, that has been to Kandahar, if I'd have landed in Kandahar, it would have smelled like hot garbage, and I would have been. But in Bagram, it was cool and clear and clean. And then the second thing that really caught my eyes as my eyes adjusted was awesome mountains, snow-capped mountains, beautiful mountains. Like I knew Afghanistan had mountains, but I just, in my head, in my mind's eye, it was going to be this nastiness because there's just all this ugliness. How could there be beauty in the middle of this ugliness? Well, what I realized is I had it backwards. There was ugliness in the middle of beauty because the beauty always was there, right? And so when we flew over these mountains, I'm looking at it, and I'm still like, wow, this is amazing. I would go snowboarding there, I'd go here, I'd hit a jump over there, maybe I'd try to not hit a landmine over there. And, so as we're flying, we're really kind of in that moment, and then we get called down into the gunfight. So a guy on the ground is taking fire from Taliban, from insurgents, and there's bullets going both ways. The feeling changes immediately because he's out of breath. You can hear gunfire punctuating his, in the background. He's saying we need immediate suppression. We are pinned down. And then all of a sudden we change, right? We're out of the mountains now. We are out of those mountains and into the gunfight, focused on what a front sight focus is what we call it, right? What's right in front of us. What's right in front of us is very impactful, very, very. The words are eluding me right now, but you need to focus. You need to be in that moment. But when you're in that moment, you can be deceived that is all there is. That's all there is, because we're shooting the enemy, enemy is shooting us. We're very focused on what's going on. But what never changed was those mountains. The mountains stayed beautiful. The mountains were still going, even though we all of a sudden have this feeling of intenseness and urgency, and that maybe this is it. That in and of itself is the finite. We're looking at it almost as if it's infinite when we're in it, when we're buried in it, but it's the finite. It's going to end. We're going to be done with that. And those mountains never go anywhere. Like those things are staying there. They were there before, they were there, they'll be there during, they'll be there afterwards. So those are the infinite. And that so many times in our lives, that's what we do. We confuse our little gunfights as the big picture. Now, this is the big picture. And when you get so buried in that gunfight, and it can convince you that the only way out is to end your own life. But you're in the finite. You're just treating it like an infinite. The beauty is still there. You just have to. Gratitude is. I mean, this is cliche, but gratitude is key. Gratitude is key to keeping perspective on the mountains. Identify your mountains. Understand when you're in gunfights and identify your mountains. So when I told somebody this is, it could be as simple as the sun coming up in the morning. And I always love that example, because I said, is that really that simple? Because if the sun didn't come up in the morning, how would we all be, right? If that didn't happen, we're all done, right? How many simple things that we say simple can we be completely grateful for, because they are mountains that are there for us every day? Breathing is one of them. Having enough oxygen on this planet, not the other planets don't, right? And if that changes just a little bit, we're done. There's something, but there's other gunfights. There's other mountains, like Nicole can be my mountain, right? Because she's somebody that's there for me, that has love for me, that I can use as a mountain. We need to identify our mountains, because go ahead.
No, I think that there's two components to this though. Because I think it's not only showing gratitude and identifying our mountains, but it's how do we serve others, right? And bringing that component into it, right? You're in the gunfight because you were there to help and protect others, to serve and protect others. That also gives you a different perspective, right? A different purpose and reason. When you're feeling like you're in it alone and it's just you, it's a lot harder to get those perspectives. It's a lot harder to take that step back and remember to be grateful. But when you can find ways to serve others and to show up, not just for yourself, because you have to show up for yourself first, but to show up for the community, for your family, for the people around you, and be grateful for that opportunity to be there for them. Because in doing the work for others, and that's really what we learn in this training, that's really what, helped me the most, and what continues to help me the most, is in doing work for others, I'm really just doing work for myself, right? That we're just all mirrors of each other.
Yeah, it's the mirror and the message again, right?
One thing that's really cool about this is you can't turn you can't turn the infinite into the finite, but you can turn a gunfight into a mountain. Because when you get through your gunfight, you have that feeling of accomplishment. You have that pride of what you did. You have that strength that's derived from getting through that gunfight. And that now can be one of your mountains. So you can't turn a mountain into, you can't turn the infinite into finite, but you can turn finite into infinite.
Yeah, I love that you said that. Because that is one of my mountains, right? Is being in the gunfight, you know, experiencing addiction, going through that, then going through this training and realizing that it was all perspective, that there was that shift that happened for me, and realizing that this could be a strength, and it didn't have to be something that, it's not a label. It's not something negative. You know, it's something that's positive. That's my opportunity, that it's an opportunity that I got to go through and experience that. And what we believe is that people aren't addicts. I don't like that label at all, but that we experience addiction, right? And so once you realize that that's something you've experienced and that was an opportunity, it made this, it helped me create such a shift in my life. You know, if you told me 2 years ago that I would be doing this, I don't know if I would have believed you, right? I would have said, that sounds awesome. Where do I sign up? But I wouldn't have pictured it, you know, so and that's really what the training has done. And, you know, all the stuff that Brian teaches in his book. And that's what got me excited about it when I first read your book, Brian, and said, like, okay, how do I get to be a part of this? You know, like, because this is so cool. And I love your message. And it went right along with everything that we were already experiencing and learning. And so, yeah, I really love that what you say, you know, you can turn the finite into something infinite. And so those moments that I thought were so horrible, you know, there were times where I just wanted to end my life, where I thought, what is my purpose? Why am I even here? And to be able to look at those now and realize that they're a strength, and I'm grateful for them.
You know, and Nicole, we talked a little bit before Brian got on, and, you know, you were saying you just really recently just started opening up, right? And the same has happened with me. And I think we touched base on it just shortly when we first met out at the mascot. Well, you know, I didn't even start opening up and sharing my story until January of this year. And the weight that comes off of us by doing so is so huge. And I believe it really starts helping us see the big picture, right? We start, because just like you, if someone almost 3 years ago said, Al, you will have a podcast about addiction, you will be doing public speaking about addiction and inspiration, I probably would have looked at him and said, you got your head so far up your rear end, you have no clue what you're talking about. Now here I am doing it, right? Not realizing this was the path that I was going to take. However, all of us that are on this show today, plus our listeners, we've all had to go through these certain experiences to put us where we're at today, because 3 years ago, we wasn't ready. When the time was right, we became ready. I guess it's like that old saying, I guess when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. You know, and I never really understood that concept a lot, really didn't even put a lot of thought into it until lately, right? Because it's so true. And it's huge for somebody to open up and tell others about a time of their life that they're not proud of, but they're proud of it today just because of who it made them, right? And where it actually put them. About 6 years ago, I went to an AA meeting with my wife, and this guy got up to get his chip. And I've said this on the show quite a few times, and I like saying it because it meant so much to me. It just resonated with me. He got up, and the first thing he said is he got his chip. He's holding the chip and he's rubbing it. And he says, you know, the first thing I do is I wake up every morning and I thank God for making me an alcoholic. And I leaned over to my wife and I said, that guy is effing nuts. I don't understand. Why would he say that? Why would he thank God for making him an alcoholic? Now, being in the position that I am in the recovery community, I get it, because it made him the amazing individual that he is today. And he's the guy that's putting his hand out, helping others who are probably doing the same thing, going, why the hell would he thank God for making him an alcoholic? Right? So
Yeah.
it changes us.
Well, and I love that you said that. Oh, sorry, Brian. Really quick, I just had this thought this morning as I was listening to a podcast on my way into a meeting. I was just thinking about how we say to ourselves and we tell the world our past doesn't define us, right? And to me, I think our past absolutely does define us. It's how we define our past. And that's what's more important. Yes, our past is a part of us. It's who we are. And that's okay. It's being able to accept that and have that self-love and say, absolutely, that's a part of me. And I'm grateful for that. And my past does define me. It defines everything that I do today, right? There's no way around that. It doesn't mean I have to be that person. It means that I get to learn from that experience.
Well put. Yes.
I think it was super interesting listening to both of you is what clicked with me is you guys just shared your Utah Jazz halftime. You just shared your experiences where you realized your story had power. Your story carries with it the power to affect others. And the only way that gets out there is if you open your mouth. And when you do, it's cathartic. So not only does it help others, it helps you. So it just that's what hit me right when you guys both said similar things is, and I've seen this with Nicole as she starts to be more comfortable with sharing her story. It's because she realizes it has power. You know, it's hard for her, but it becomes easier when she sees the power it has to help other people, right? And I'm guessing that was similar with you, Al, that at first it was hard for you, but once you saw, well, one, it helped you, but the power it had to help other people, then you're like, you know what, I can be proud of this. Because if I didn't have this, I couldn't do this with these people. I couldn't help these people. So I can be grateful for that experience because now I can pay it forward.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And, you know, it was my ego that was holding me back before, right? Our ego has a way of really creeping in and holding us back from a lot of things, or actually taking us in areas we really don't want to go. And I didn't want family to know. I didn't. And it had still dawned on me for a long time. Even starting the show, I was actually feeling very, very guilty, extremely guilty. Because here I am doing a show about addiction, and my guests are coming on being very vulnerable, and I'm not even being 100% vulnerable. So how is that fair even for my guests, right? And the day that it happened just happened. It's like God scripted exactly how it was supposed to happen that day. And it was a good friend of mine, Dave DeRocher, who's the executive director from the Other Side Academy, downtown Salt Lake. I got to share stage with him in St. George last August. Very, very powerful speaker. And I met with him and asked him just some advice. What can I do? What can I learn from you to learn how to be better on stage, to really resonate with the audience, right? I want them to feel me. And he basically got right in my face after he asked permission to speak openly. He got right in my face, pointed his finger right in my face and said, you start telling your effing damn story instead of your wife's effing damn story. That's what it will take. His assistant, Robin Sims, who I love dearly, she's an amazing individual, beautiful lady, inside and out, was my guest co-host that day. Well, guess what? Our guest didn't show. I still haven't heard from her. Emailed her, texted her night before she was on. I just hope everything's okay. However, Robin's like, so no show. And I said, yeah, you're the host of The Other Side of Addiction today. I'm the guest. You're interviewing me. And that's exactly how it all went down. And she was telling me during the interview, she was watching me get lighter and lighter and lighter because, again, I was opening up. I was sharing something that was literally holding me down, not even realizing it was holding me down because of my ego, number one. Number two, because of the shame. Three, the fear. And I think that happens to so many of us when we have a right to feel all those, and we have a right to share it with people that we trust. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, I agree. I was kind of laughing to myself when you said sometimes our ego takes us to places we don't want to be. Brian and I recently were at an event. We had an opportunity to speak. And my ego was like, oh, I want to get up there and speak. And so I told Brian, I want to speak on stage too. And I thought I really did, but that was really my ego. And so then we get there and Brian's like, there's like 500 people here. And these are all very, people of affluence or influence. It was a really great crowd. And I got up, and I'm like starting to freak out. And then I get up on stage and I'm thinking like, why did I let my ego tell me I wanted to do this? And then I get up there and I'm like talking and I cannot remember a dang thing that I'm supposed to say. And all I could do, and at that point, and this is when it's really like, you've got to come from the heart, right? And I was like, I just have to get real with them and tell them like, and I was like, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I cannot remember a thing I'm supposed to say. And everybody started cheering and clapping for me. And it was so nice and kind of them. And I was like, I love you guys. Thank you. But, I had to laugh at that because I thought, how many times does my ego like get me into places where I'm like, why did I do this?
Yeah. And even our subconscious, right? I mean, our subconscious is there to protect us, and it doesn't know what's real and it doesn't know what's fake. It's just there to do one purpose, and it's to protect us. And it's crazy how even that subconscious will kick in, right? And start giving us those fears. And I'm a firm believer, if it scares the hell out of us, we need to do it.
Well, that's what pushed me forward to the stage. I kept thinking, okay, I'm terrified, but I'm going to do it. And Brian was like, I was like, Brian, I changed my mind. You're up. The whole thing is yours.
She's like, you just do it. And I'm like, nope.
Nope.
And thank you for having my back and making me, giving me the opportunity to step through that fear. And I don't know if I'll do it again, but I have gotten a couple of opportunities since then where people have said, hey, would you like to speak just on a small scale, nothing big? And I think maybe I'll keep trying it just to get through that fear and to have that experience, right? I'll get better at it, but I don't know if I ever want to be in that position again.
Yeah. I look at fear as the opposition keeping us away from something that is going to be great for us, right? Because in my eyes, the fear is the devil's playground, right? I mean, I read the book that Napoleon Hill wrote, Outwitting the Devil? Anyway, he interviewed, the book was written in 1934. His wife swore that book would not be published as long as she was alive. And it wasn't. It didn't get published till after she had passed, somewhere like in the early 1980s, I think it was. And Napoleon Hill asked the devil what he thought about religion. And if he's bothered by religion, and the devil chuckles and says, oh, religion? Why? I love religion. And he's like, what do you mean you love religion? He goes, because they put the fear of me in them. Because they're like, don't go with the devil. Don't do this because this is evil. And it's like people get fear, and fear is my playground, and religion is my actually greatest ally. And that just hit me so hard. It's crazy. Out of that whole book that's this thick, that's the only thing that I really, really remember out of it. And it's just like when you were just saying what you were saying, Nicole, I'm picturing Brian getting his orders, right? Okay, you got to get in this Black Hawk, and this is where I need you to go, and you're going to be under heavy fire. And I can see Brian over there going, nope, nope, I'm not going. Hell no, right? He has to suck in that fear, and he knows that he has to do it, and he has to go in there and do it, whether his shrink factor is at a 0. I mean, yeah, I just think
I don't know if Brian's ever experienced fear. Brian, do you ever? Like, he just does everything. Like, he just goes for it.
Well, one thing I wanted to point out is to Al's point. So Nicole did push through that fear. So she did go up there, and she did come from the heart. And yeah, it wasn't what she had planned to say, but it was effective, right? Not only was it effective for what we needed to do, but now she has this greater perspective of maybe where she wants to go. She was able to say, hey, this was my ego. This is me. This is where I'm at. Do I want to do this more? Maybe not. But there's growth that came regardless, because she pushed through the fear. She wouldn't experience that if she wouldn't push through that fear. And how would you, and I don't even know this, but I'm going to ask, how would you feel if I would have said, when you said, you just do it. And I went up there and did it, and you did not step through that fear?
I would have felt like I ripped myself off. I would have regretted it the whole night. I would have been regretting it. I would still be regretting it today, right? That'd be one of those moments where you look back and you go, I should have just gone for it.
And we didn't rehearse that, but I knew that was going to be her answer. And I knew that would be her. And I knew that's why when she said, you just do it, I said no, because I knew exactly then if I did that, it would be a regret going forward. And there would be weakness created instead of strength. Right. And now as it stands, strength was created,
Yeah.
whether she's going to continue to do that or not, doesn't matter. Strength was created.
And luckily I have incredible people around me. I even tried to convince Shane, who's one of our partners, who's the facilitator for our training, to go up and talk instead of me. He said no.
He didn't tell me that.
Yeah. I was like, we've got to get somebody else to do this. But I have amazing people around me, and I think that's really important too. So grateful to Brian, who sees me and holds me to that standard and doesn't let me be less than what I am.
Well, and two things I want to to your audience, Al. How often do we cave to fear? How often are you caving to fear and selling, and to use Nicole's words, ripping yourself off? Because that's really what you're doing. How often are we doing that? Right. And then the other thought I had on that, just completely, to use Nicole's words, just completely left my brain. So yeah, I had another thought on it, but we all have fear. Fear is primal. I early on, I decided that fear was a wasted emotion. At 14 or 15, I said, fear is only there to save your butt in really dire situations. So if it's not that situation, it's a wasted emotion, right? And for whatever reason, that took anchor. So I don't feel fear too often. I'm not saying I never feel fear, but not too often, because that perspective, and that's what we also try to teach in the training, is like, look, step through your fear. And we will challenge people to do that in the training. And it is a big challenge to some of them in certain circumstances. We don't say that our training is easy. We just say it's effective.
And most of the time, the reason why we're afraid, right? I think so much of the time, what fear comes down to is judgment of others. How am I going to be perceived? I can think of a million situations where I feel fear, and what it comes down to 90% of the time, it's not that I'm afraid I'm going to fall off the cliff. I'm afraid I'll look stupid doing it. Right. And it's that in having that self-worth, really, because so much comes down to self-worth. And that's really what we teach is, how do you value yourself? How do you love yourself? We like to say that we're all butterflies pretending to be caterpillars, right? We're beautiful. We're exactly who we are supposed to be and how we're supposed to be. And we just need to be accepting of that. And that's one thing I've really learned from Brian a lot, just watching him, because he has this incredible self-confidence and just knowledge of who he is. And, that's something that I think we can all admire, but we all have that ability just to step through that and just to let go of that and not worry about what the world's going to think of us or what others are going to think of us, and not judge ourselves either in those situations, right? Because it's so easy to judge ourselves. And I think the lens that we judge ourselves is the same lens we judge others with. So when we learn to have that self-compassion and that self-love, it's so much easier to look at others and have that compassion and that love. And when you have that, it goes back to vulnerability, right? If I'm vulnerable, it makes it easier for the people around me to be vulnerable and to drop our walls and to see each other heart to heart and have those conversations instead of trying to look good. And I'm in circles all the time where I think, oh, I definitely don't want to talk in front of this group. They're all amazing, and they're all so successful. But then once I'm able to realize, my success and their success are different. There's no comparison, and that we're all valuable people. And I drop those walls within myself and open up with my heart. It's amazing how the people just open up too. And then we're making these great connections, and it's beautiful to have happen and experience, but also that we get to love each other that way too.
Yeah. And those are the people we bring more into our life, right? Those same type of people. The first speaking engagement I did was at a Murray Chamber luncheon. probably, I think there was 17 people that was there. And I broke down and started crying during my talk. And as I'm still finishing up, in the back of my head, I'm going, holy crap, I just look like a freaking boob. What a wussy, you know, and I'm still doing my talk, but yet I'm judging myself on all this, right? After the event, I went off to the side and I'm just really disappointed in myself. And then people started coming up and hugging me and going, oh my gosh, I had no clue. And I remember one of my friends, she came up and I told her, I says, gosh, Javine, I apologize for crying. She goes, oh, don't you dare apologize. Because she said, you had at least 6 of us in this audience crying with you because we felt your emotions. We felt the true you, right? And she goes, don't you dare ever lose that. If you're going to go this direction, don't ever lose that. And it sounds like you did that when you went up stage, right? You just said, okay, this is who I am. I'm going to let it go. But again, you're 100% right. What are people going to, how are they going to see us? And really, it doesn't matter because it's how we see ourselves. If we're confident and we believe in ourselves, we will continue to grow, and we will attract those same type of people who are going to help us along our journey, whether they're here for a short time or a long time. You know, I mean, it sounds like just from what I've known of you guys, that's the reason why you and Brian met, right? You were both going through your journeys and you guys just happened to be the right pair to come together to help help each other. And this is how I see it. Every time I get on and do a show, I'm getting helped every single week. I am learning something every single week. Every week, my guests, without them even knowing it, are putting their hand out to me and going, take my hand, let me take you on a journey that's going to lead you somewhere great. They don't even know they're doing that for me. So our listeners and our guests who've been on the show, that's exactly what you've done for me. And so many people that have been on the show who now that work in the recovery community after they've been in long-term recovery, they're like, I'm out there helping as many people as I can. What they don't realize is they're helping me. And that's what I love about doing this and meeting individuals like yourself, because we are all helping one another and we will continue to grow this energy. I mean, it's building and it's building quick. People are finally starting, their light bulbs are finally starting to go off, right? This is my belief. They're finally starting to get rid of the negative bull crap that's on TV and going, you know what? Let's quit feeding the bad energy. Let's start feeding the good energy.
Right. And that's the shift that we talk about too in our training. And when you have that shift inside yourself, then you can shift the world around you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Brian, you got to have something to say on that.
I know. I was just waiting. I'm like, okay, pause.
Sitting there. I'm like, come on.
Well, the thing that I think is super huge with what we're just saying as far as the shift, it isn't just a 1-for-1. If one person shifts, you didn't just shift the world by one person, because that person has ripple effects. We just talked about it. You just talked about it. You talked about tearing up. You talked about being open. You talked about that connection. That one shift for you created at least 6 shifts, because you said there was at least 6 other people that were feeling it.
Yeah.
At least to some degree, right? And maybe it'll take 5 or 6 of those experiences for them to really have a shift. But that's why, no matter what your religion is or whatever, the worth of souls is great. If one soul shifts, it's not one soul. That will ripple, and then that will ripple, and then that will ripple. So when we do our training, that's what we say. The good news is now you know, and the bad news is now you know, because there's a responsibility that comes with that. There's responsibility that comes with understanding the power that you have inside of you. You can't hold that underneath. You can't hide it. You're doing everyone around you a disservice if you do.
Yeah. Amen. You're 100% right on that, Brian. Absolutely. The ripple effect is huge. It's that snowball, right? You can make a little snowball the size of a marble, and you just keep rolling it around, and before you know it, it's going to be pretty large.
Yeah. And I think that's what you're feeling when you say it's shifting, it's changing. You're getting people that are leaning into that vulnerability, and it's exponential. It's growing. It's growing.
Okay.
So let our audience know a little bit more about your guys' event that's coming up, because it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's here in about another 2 weeks or a week and a half. Is that correct?
Well, we got lots of events.
Well, we'll talk about the training first. Let's do
Okay,
that.
the training one, your most recent one that's coming up.
Yeah. So our our closest target right now is our training. We call it the Journey to Nobody. That's October 19th, 20th, and 21st. It's a 3-day experiential training, and that's really, kind of the capstone to what we're doing. And anybody who wants to know more about it, please contact us. We'll be happy to tell you more about it. It's at a beautiful location in southern Utah. It's at Homestead Ranch. It's gorgeous up there. It's very peaceful and serene. But the training is tough. And I will tell you, you have to be mentally prepared for it. So if you're somebody who likes a challenge, well, that's what got Brian into it, right? If you're somebody who likes to and wants to experience growth and wants to experience just something different that you haven't ever experienced before, this is for you.
Okay. Will you guys please make sure I have a link or something where I can put on the notes? So, because this show will definitely be aired way before this event, and yeah, or at least a website or something so people can go in and check it out. Anything we can do to help get it out there for you.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll
Yeah,
share.
you can sign up. You can sign up through the website, so we'll definitely give you the website,
Okay.
and just click on it.
And then one thing I'd like to share about our training too, that's been really cool, is we've had people come through and they said, I was at the end of my rope. I was suicidal. I was thinking of committing suicide. And this has created a change for me, right? Now I see it differently. And so that's really cool to know that you have that kind of impact, right? And it's not just us, it's the entire team, that gets together, and it's everybody in the room is able to have that type of an effect. And then other people go through the training like Brian and I, and we're like, we want to take this to the world, right? We want everybody to experience this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the coolest way I heard it put was a week ago, I was ready to end it. And now my perspective has shifted so much that it's laughable that was even an option. They were buried in the gunfight. And then all of a sudden they saw the mountain, and they're like, oh my gosh, I was going to make an infinite decision based off of a finite situation. That's just dumb. So it's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like a powerful event. You guys have spoke with me about it just here and there, and it sounds very, very powerful. And I mean, this is really like you're getting deep, right? You're getting really deep. It's not, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's not like one of these rah, let's build your self-esteem up just so you can leave the place and be excited for 24 hours and then you go back to your normal life, right? Because that's what happens with a lot of people, right? They go to these events, they get all built up, and they're all excited, but within probably a week, they've lost all that enthusiasm. Because yeah, this isn't this type of event. This is something, man, you guys are going to dig deep. You're going to get your claws into these individuals, and these claws aren't going to come out because they're going to want to go further into this to better their life.
Right. Like we say, we're not self-help. What you described as self-help, right? Where
Yes.
You get together, you go to these big events, you walk away feeling amazing, and you will walk away feeling amazing from ours, but it's because of what you create. And it's because you do step through that fear and you're willing to do the work. We're not going to let you off easy. And it is hard. It's not easy. My second day there, I said, if there's 2 things that I said I will not do. And if I have to do these 2 things, I'm done. I'm out. I'm leaving. I'm not going to go through it. And that's what I was telling myself. Now, I'd made a commitment to stay for the whole thing, and I followed through on it. And I'm so grateful I did. But you do have to face things. You do have to go through things. But the payoff is incredible. Everything you want, you can have. Everything that you want. And at the beginning of it, we will say, what do you want? What are your intentions, right? And most people feel like they're missing the things they list that they want, right? So if I ask you, what do you want what do you want out of life, Al? And I'll tell you that the three answers I usually get are more money, more time, or love, right? They're usually something along those lines, but it always comes down to the emotions behind them, right? They want to feel loved. They want to feel freedom. And those are the things that they feel like they're missing. And if you make it through this training, you will have those things.
Okay, question on that. You said if you make it through the training.
Well,
A lot of
it's
people, some people may just not be able to take it, right? Is what you're saying?
We do an enrollment first because it isn't for everybody. You have to be committed. The first day is going to test pretty much anybody. The second day still tests. This is the way I put it. The first day you pay, the second day you pay attention, and the third day is the payoff, right? But if you don't make it to the third day, you're not getting the payoff, which is why we do the enrollment call, because we want everybody to make it to the third day. But there are people that don't. There are people that not a lot, because we do a decent job of filtering,
Right.
but you have to want real change in your life.
I love it.
And be committed to it. And really it comes down to just be your word. That's really what we focus on, the whole be your word. That's it. And the facilitator that does this thing is phenomenal. Shane Scott is a guy that does it. He doesn't like a lot of fame or whatever. He doesn't put his name out there, but he's really good at what he does.
And let me tell you on that note with Shane, I mean, he's been doing this for over 20 years. And he's been doing it in the addiction recovery space. And in that space, he has over an 80% efficacy rate, which is why a big part of what we're doing, we're bringing this to the addiction recovery space. So right now we have a hospital that we're working on acquiring, finishing off some funding for that. And that's what we plan on doing, is a trauma-informed addiction recovery center where we use this IP in the community. Because I know for me, I went to rehab once, and it was a good one. It wasn't a bad rehab. The people are wonderful. They teach some of these principles, but there were components that were missing that didn't click for me, right? There were things that I didn't feel in alignment with, especially when you get into the outpatient, you have all these other things going on, and it just wasn't really making sense for me. And I thought, I'm not ever going to do this again. And then I went to this training and everything clicked. And after I'd gone through the training, I remember after those 3 days, and I mean, Brian and I were in the training together. Brian, I mean, how was I in the training? I like kind of stayed in the background. I tried not to be seen, right? Like I tried to hide out, right? Like I did my best to. It's really hard to do there, but at the end of it, I went up to the facilitator, Shane, and I said, I don't know what changed. I mean, I feel it. I can't put it into words, but I don't want to use any substances now. I don't want to drink. Like it's just gone. That feeling, that desire is just gone. And it just was this shift that happened that I wasn't expecting. That wasn't what I was expecting to get out of it. And that's when he told me that he does this work in addiction recovery. And because I was saying like, you should do this in addiction. He's like, I already do, like this. So it's really incredible.
Yeah, it sounds like an amazing event. That's for sure. Gosh, guys, we've been into this an hour already. It goes by so flipping fast. I think that's why some of my shows end up going like an hour and a half or a little bit longer, because it just flies by and the information is so good, right? I mean, we can all learn from all this, and what you guys shared today. I just have to say thank you so much, because the information that you guys gave today was incredible in my eyes. I picked up on some things. I've got a whole sheet down here of just little tidbits of things that each of you have said that really resonated with me. And some of it may just pop in my head tomorrow, because I have my whole presentation. I've got my PowerPoint to help kind of keep me on track. However, I always do a little prayer before I go on, and I just ask God to direct me in the direction that I'm going to go. And sometimes I'll veer off a little bit, but in my eyes, that I have finally learned that's the direction I'm supposed to go, right? If this is the direction I go, it's God leading me in that direction. And I may just say some of the things that you guys have said, just today in this show. Brian, What's that?
No problem with that at all.
No problem. Yeah.
And just so your listeners know, this is the first podcast that Nicole and I have done together. We've done them individually. We've never done one together. So you get that you got the very first one.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. We'll put the trademark on this one then. Thank you so much. And Brian, before we go off, and there's a couple questions I want to ask you guys, but before we do, thank you so much for giving me a copy of your book. And I got to get a chance to where I can read it. Matter of fact, I was just given another book today at a networking group of someone that really wants me to read it. And I just got another book last week of someone else that wrote a book, and I've got so many I got to read, and I'm such a slow reader. I'll probably be 80 by the time I finish them all. I just really need to kick myself in the rear and just spend more time on burying myself, even if it's just a chapter, a day. Where can people find this book, and just give our listeners a little bit more information about it?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. You can go there, Cleared Hot, by Brian SLADE and Michael Hirsch. And it's also on Audible, Al. So if you don't want to read it, you can listen to it, because I sympathize with that. I don't like to read that much. I love listening. In fact, I'm on my way up to Salt Lake and stopped in Cedar to do this thing, and I'm listening to a book. But it's on Audible as well, Spotify, and basically all the places you can get an audiobook. It's out there.
And Brian actually reads it himself, which
it's my voice. It's my voice.
Oh,
I
I
love
it.
Stuff in the Audible one.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's either a good thing or a bad thing. I'll let you guys decide.
that's like my buddy Laban Ditchbird. He did the voice for his too. And what's funny is he's out of New Zealand, right? So he's got that Australian accent. And
well, I should have had him read my book.
Oh my gosh, he is so hilarious, and he does the accents for everything. He talks about back when he was in his addiction, and he had an addiction with everything: sex, drugs, gambling. He says I was addicted to it all, and he was talking about being a casino once, and these two Russian women come up to him and says, oh, and he does the Russian accent, if like female Russian accent. Oh, for $800, we do anything you want, and he's like, anything. And he's like, how do I come up with this $800? And it's just hilarious listening to him. But yeah, so Cleared Hot, guys. Thank you. And Amazon, you said, to get it. And yep. I will definitely get into your book and give you my reviews, which I'm sure will be awesome.
Yeah, please do leave reviews. That's a world that I wasn't aware of, but it matters.
Yeah, it does, right? It really does. So 2 last questions for the both of you. You guys can answer them both if you'd like. Answer them one. Just however you guys feel like it needs to be answered. These 2 questions I love to ask at the end of the show. What did you want our listeners to gain from this show today? And or what would be your main message for our listeners?
You want to go?
Yeah, I'll go first, and then you can go. How about that? Because I know I don't want to forget what I'm going to say, Brian. So for me, I think the most important message is that you're enough, you're whole and complete exactly as you are. That's really what's important, in that the things that you might be experiencing right now, the things you might be going through, that there's an opportunity there, and that you can help others through your experiences. I think that's really the most important message, is, the self-worth piece of it, that you are whole and complete and you are enough. Nobody's broken. And then what was the second part of your question, Al?
What would be your main message?
Oh yeah. And that's it, right?
Okay. All right.
That we are enough exactly as we are.
I love it. Brian.
Just to pick, obviously we're gonna have very similar messages since we're on the same boat with this thing, but whatever you're experiencing, it's important that you understand that you chose it. Not because you need to feel guilty, not because you need to feel ashamed, but because you need to understand that you are infinitely powerful, which means you have the power to choose something different. You have the power to get everything that you want, everything that you feel you need. It's just, you have to really want it, right? because we get exactly what we want. And it's hard for people to grasp that. No, I don't want this. I don't want that. But we create these experiences so that we continue to get what we've always got, right? And there is a way to shift that. And that's what we teach people to do in our training. It's not easy for a lot of people to even grasp that concept, but they have the power. You have infinite power. Infinite power. And on that note, our message is that there are no limits. Like we can get through this, and it does have that synergistic effect as a group, like what we've talked about. We'll change the world that way.
I love it. Guys, man, it's been so inspirational and great to have you guys on the show today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules, because I know you guys are booked. You got a lot of things that you're going on. You're out there making a difference. So again, thank you so much. It was an absolute honor and a pleasure to have the both of you. And I'm hoping here in the near future, I don't know. You never know where things will go. Maybe there's something we'll be able to work on together. I don't know, but
I feel we will.
Yeah, I feel like there's a really good relationship here, and there can be some neat things that happen. So thank you so much. And yeah, audience, be sure to listen to this, and we'll have the link down on there for their up and coming event that they've got going on the 19th, 20th, and 21st. Thank you to all our listeners, guys. Again, if it wasn't for you, our sponsors, all our guests, none of this would be possible. You guys are the ones that's making this show what it is. It's not me. This is just a platform. You guys are the ones that are making the difference out there in the world. So I couldn't do it without you. Thank you. Thank you very much for everything. And guys, remember this: addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.